was Paul who came up with this aircraft from the Canadian subsidiary Sigurd Yakimio, the chief engineer of de Havilland, Canada, who worked pre-war for PZL in Poland before leaving for France when hostilities broke out. The trainer, I will sell it. That they and he definitely did. Being equipped as it was with such niceties as flaps, brakes, an enclosed cockpit and a radio, even so, it took a while for sales to get going. There were still so many perfectly serviceable, perfectly acceptable wartime trainers around. And of course governments like Britain's didn't have much money in the immediate post-war world to buy new aircraft. Pretty soon, things picked up. 735 Chipmunks ended up being taken on strength by the RAF, and this bright red one in front of us now is probably the most famous of them all. This aeroplane served initially with the RAF from 1952 to 58. It then went into storage as part of defence cuts, but it re-emerged when the Air Force was looking for a training aeroplane to teach the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince William of Gloucester and Prince Michael of Kent. And it was then flying from the Queen's Flight base at Benson that it was first painted in the bright red scheme of the Queen's Flight, and it subsequently had turned to the Queen's Flight in order to train the then Prince of Wales, today's King Charles. He conducted 101 training flights in this very aeroplane, including his first solo, which took place not far from here at Bassingbourn. His main base for his training was at Oakington, which was, like Bassingbourn, close to Cambridge, where he was then studying at Trinity College. Crossford was out of limits that day at Oakington, so he carried out that first solo from Bassingbourn. That was on the 14th of January 1969, and he carried on doing a good deal more of the aerobatic qualities of the Chipmunk from the Shuttleworth collection aeroplane, the yellow one, which now joins the Royal Chipmunk in front of us. Chipmunks were built in Canada, and its service with the Royal Canadian Air Force started in 1949. Not all the Chipmunks that were ordered by the RCAF went into its service, though. Quite a lot were passed to flying clubs for use under the Refresher Flying Training Plan, building up a reserve of flying instructors. The last were retired by the Canadian military in 1971 to 72. This, going through its aerobatic paces, is representative of another of the Chipmunk's customer nations, Portugal. Therefore, bought initially 10 British-built aircraft as far back as 1951. They were assembled by the Portuguese State Aircraft Factory, which then built 60 more of its own. The Portuguese Air Force Academy at Sintra, northeast of Lisbon, initially as tugs for its Schleicher AS-21 gliders, but then in 1997 those 7 aircraft returned to service as trainers in their own right as the most cost-effective option for Portuguese Air Force pilots, re-equipped with 180 horsepower light-loading engines. and 6 of them are still in Portuguese service to this day. Portugal is the last as non-historic aircraft. This will do glider towing as well as initial pilot screening. It was announced only last month that the Portuguese Chipmunks will be replaced by Italian-built Tecnam P-Mentor trainers, but a date for that is still unconfirmed. And when the Portuguese brought 3 of their 6 Chipmunks to Duxford for the Chipmunk celebration there at the beginning of this month, one of the pilots told me that it's possible they may retain at least some of the Chipmunks for use as glider tugs, because they still have that requirement at the Air Force Academy. Portuguese Chipmunk in today's display, built in Portugal by Ogma in 1958, and it's today owned by airline pilot David Peters, a member of the vintage pair display team of Chipmunks, who also offers Chipmunk flight experiences from Havilland Aerodrome. Member of the quartet, the last to go through its aerobatic routine, comes to us from the Navy Wing's heritage flight at RNAS Yeovilton in Somerset, the former Royal Navy historic flight, now in civilian hands. It's still very much a working aeroplane, providing tail dragger refreshers and conversion to pilots destined to fly the more regular Navy Wing's tailwheel-equipped display aircraft like the Fairy Swordfish. Version roll.
So how did you guys
Chipmunks have even been what you might call frontline aeroplanes on occasion with the RAF. They were flown in Cyprus at the end of the 1950s to help counter the Greek separatist movement EOKA, flying visual reconnaissances with army observers in the rear seat, convoy escorts, mail drops and other tasks.
You having fun? Oh.
And then there was their use by the RAF Gutto station flight in West Berlin, flying them on photographic reconnaissance and occasionally even electronic intelligence gathering duties on behalf of Bricksmiths, the British Commanders-in-Chief mission to the Soviet forces in Germany over the divided city during the Cold War. The story was that they were keeping senior officers stationed at Gutto in flying practice. In reality, they were exploiting to the full the Allied rights to fly within the Berlin control zone, including the East photographer in the Chipmunk took an image of the soldier firing the shot at it. Back past us for a waving pass. Next in the colours of the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy that it wore in service with Britannia Flight, training pilots at Roborough in Plymouth. Eric Brannan at the controls of that aeroplane, and then the last into land, the Portuguese-built piloted by its owner, David Petters. That was our Chipmunk 80th anniversary salute, and wasn't it a real treat? Yes, we wholeheartedly agree with your round of applause. Thank you very much indeed. Now a lovely formation of our coastal reconnaissance land plane in the run-up to World War II.